What's up, dudes and dudettes? Josh Cripps here from Sea to Summit Photography Workshops, and today I'm going to show you guys a cool way to get rid of red fringing in your photos. So say you're working on an image and you get, half an hour into your edits and you realize that you forgot to do your chromatic aberration removal, or maybe it just didn't work very well, and you're left with these really horrifying red fringes like this on your photo. So let me zoom in, you can really see how ugly that red fringing is, because I don't want that crap. I want these beautiful purple mountains, not this red ugly business. So here's a really nice way that you can get rid of that stuff from within Photoshop. So first thing I want to do, because I'm a big proponent of non-destructive editing, is I'm going to create a new layer that I'm going to do all of my defringing work on. And so if I hit Control or Command Shift N, and that brings up the new layer dialog box, and I'm going to name that one No Mo Fringin. Boom. Sweet. Now for the time being, I'm going to ignore that layer and head back to my background layer, because this method relies on making a really good selection on the transition between the bright sky and the dark mountains. Now you'll notice that this red fringing pretty much only occurs in high contrast areas like this, which makes this method really easy to use and quick to do, because we can use our quick selection brush to make a good selection. So if I hit W, that'll bring up my quick selection brush. Now sometimes when you hit W, it'll bring up your magic wand. So if you hold Shift and hit W again on your keyboard, then it'll cycle you to your quick selection brush. So this works best along high contrast edges, and so it should work really well for me to make a selection. And I'm just going to make a selection of the sky here above that red fringe. And there you go, it's working pretty good so far, so I'm just going to continue that selection on across these mountains over here. And yeah, that looks pretty good. It looks like it's made a nice clean selection along the mountain ridges above that fringing. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my No More Fringing layer. And with this selection, basically what I've got now is anywhere that I paint on this layer is not going to show up. I'm painting right now, unless it's within that selection, like that. And that's actually not what I want. I want to select the mountains, because I want to be able to adjust the mountains so that they get cleaned up and not dealing with this weird stuff in the sky. So let me undo that, and I'm actually going to hit Control or Command Shift I to invert that selection. So now you can see anything that I paint on the mountains shows up, and nothing that I paint in the sky shows up. Very cool. But instead of this selection, what I actually want to do is turn it into a mask. So with it selected as it is now, all I've got to do in my layers palette is go down here to the layer mask button and click that, and you'll see it's created a mask where everything I paint on this image, where it's white, I will be able to make changes, and anywhere that's black, the changes won't show up. So same deal, if I paint on the mountains, okay, but if I paint in the sky, yeah, nothing shows up. Great, which is exactly what we want. So now you can kind of see perhaps where I'm going with this, because if I paint on this layer, well, sure enough, it gets rid of that red fringing, right? It's just replaced it with this kind of mud color, and well, that doesn't look very good, because it's just this, I mean, it looks like a kid with a crayon came in here to clean up your image. So yeah, this is not the solution to go, oh yeah, sweet, check it out, man, got rid of all my chromatic aberration, but my mountains are all brown. So that's not what we're going to do. And so let me take that back a bit. What we are going to do is do something similar. We are going to paint over this area, but we're going to use the clone stamp tool. So if you hit S for stamp, that will bring up the clone stamp tool. Now make sure your opacity is up, your flow is up, and that your sample is set on current and below. So we're going to use the same idea, but what I'm going to do is sample from the mountains below where the fringing occurs, and then paint on this No More Fringing layer up above using my clone stamp tool. Now what's nice about using the clone stamp tool is it's actually sampling colors and textures from the mountains. So as I continue on here, you'll see that it basically is painting over kind of my existing mountains with other mountainy textures. Now I'm doing this really quick and dirty. You guys are obviously going to want to take a lot more care when you do this to clean this up, but I'll show you just how powerful this can be in a second. So if I keep kind of just painting over these mountains like this, and up here a little bit, there we go. Okay. Now let me get rid of that. I don't like duplicating textures like that. So now if I turn that off and on, you can see we have the basics of a nice defringing layer going on. Especially if I zoom out, you can see what a difference that really makes for cleaning up that red ugliness. And we've actually just cleaned it up, replacing it with existing textures and colors from the photo, so it looks realistic. Now there are a couple of things that I want to do to really clean this up. And one is that we really need to clean up this edge. It's got a gritty look to it, and that's just a byproduct of using that quick selection brush. But one of the great features of the latest copies of Photoshop is they have a refine mask feature. So if I click on my mask here in my layers palette, then go up to select and refine mask, it gives me all kinds of options to clean up that mask. And one of the things that I can do is if I up this smoothing right here, what it'll do is you'll see it just really contours that edge to make it nice and clean. And if I hit the contrast up a little bit too, that'll make it nice and sharp. The other thing that you can play around with is you can shift your edge up or down, and that'll help take care of any weird like outlying bits that may be popping up. So you can see how I had a little bit of extra red fringe poking up kind of up here. Well, if you shift your edge up, then it will also help push that up. Now I don't want to do it quite to that extreme amount, but you get the idea. So if I go ahead and click OK, and if I go back at my history, or actually I can just hit Control or Command Z, you'll see what a difference to the mask that makes from that's the before, nice and gritty, to nice and smooth. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Now the other thing that I want to do is when I clone from down here to paste up here, you can see exactly how dark the mountains got in this area, and they don't quite blend in because well, they just don't. So I'm going to fix that really easily. I'm going to use a curves adjustment layer, and one of the things that I'm going to do with this curves adjustment layer is clip it to my no more fringing layer. So to do that, hold Alt or Option and click in between the two layers on your layers palette. Now any adjustment that I make with this curves adjustment is only going to be applied to that no more fringing layer. You can see how it's just applied to that area where I made that clone stamp. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag up the brightness the tiniest bit, and just till it starts to look a little more realistic. Now it's looking pretty good in this area, but it's still too dark over here, so I'm going to drag it up a little bit more, and that looks pretty good right about there. So now I think this area is maybe a little too light, and that area is looking just about right. So what I can do is I can actually draw on the mask of this curved layer, and that will help me even out the tones here. So this is looking good, this is too bright. So going to my brush tool, B, and then I want to switch that so I'm painting out the adjustment. So I'm going to hit X, which will make black my foreground color. Now with my brush, I want to make sure that I'm using a nice low opacity, like 20%, and I'm just going to paint a little bit there, like that. And you can see the difference. It's a very subtle change, but just brushing out that selection a little bit makes it blend in much more nicely. Okay, so cool. That's pretty much all there is to it. You can see the difference between the area that I adjusted using this technique and the area that I didn't adjust, just how garish that red fringe can be. And if I go back over here, now this area is a little bit muddy. Like I said, you probably want to do this a little more delicately than I did in this quick tutorial, but if I turn it on and off, you can see really just what a dramatic difference it makes. If I zoom out to the whole image, you can see, you can get a better sort of bird's eye view of the idea. Whoops, wrong button. There we go. Cool. So that's all there is to it, guys. Using a little bit of careful selection, clone stamping, and mask refinement, you can do a really great job of cleaning up those ugly edges with that red fringe. And so hopefully this will save you a little bit of time down the road if you ever get to a spot where you're like, chromatic aberration, crap, what do I do? So there you have it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you find it useful. And from Sea to Summit Workshops, we'll catch you next time.